timeline. Starting out October 27th, 2010, UK Uncut does the first action against austerity in England. December 17th, 2010, Mohammed Bouazizi sets himself on fire in protest of not being allowed to make his own living. Kind of kicks off the Arab Spring, which spreads to 18 countries, topples governments, widespread protest. One of which would be January 25th, 2011, Tahrir Square in Egypt. Got 250,000 people in the streets of Cairo. And February 11th of 2011, Scott Walker attacks collective bargaining, which leads to the occupation of the Capitol there in Madison. And the March 12th, 2011, the Portuguese Geração Arrasca protests against austerity measures and just lack of opportunities. May 12th of 2011, Chilean student protests. No money was being put into the education system, and people got kind of frustrated about that. May 15th, 2011, 15M, the Indignados take to the streets in Spain. Justine's going to talk a little bit about them more in detail.
Yeah, I thought we would just go in detail on one of the movements. Spain was part of what some people call the European summer as opposed to the Arab Spring and the American fall. So things were going on in Greece, in Spain, and in Portugal. In Spain, they called the movement the 15M, or the Indignados. In many ways, it was similar to the Occupy movement. They had mass marches and protests of tens of thousands of people. They also took to taking over public space by camping out in plazas. They had some of the same complaints as the Occupy movement here does: unemployment, corruption in politics, welfare cuts, and a two-party system. But I think it's important to note some differences about the situation in Spain. Is the unemployment rate there is 23%, and it's 43% youth unemployment, whereas in the U.S. our general unemployment is around 8%. So things are a little bit different there. Also, there was a greater role of trade unions being involved. But the 15M movement started with a social network, or a web page, I guess, called Democracia Real Ya, which means real democracy now. And it was like a hub to bring together all of the different social groups in Spain, and use that as a way to organize all those groups to come together on May 15th, a date they picked. That was about 1 week before their local and regional elections. So they called on 50 cities around Spain to take to the streets on that day, and people took to the streets in every one of those cities. In Madrid, there were 50,000 people. In Barcelona, there were 15,000 people. And a difference that I find interesting between their movement and the Occupy movement is that their decision to camp out in the square was spontaneous. They got there and they just were like, we're going to stay here until the elections happen in a week. So on the first day, on May 15th, there were only about 100 people sleeping in the plaza there. And by the 20th, as a result of communication via the internet, there were tens of thousands of people camped in the main square in Madrid. Another interesting similarity is that they use the same General Assembly process as us and the same collective decision-making process. So after the elections, these protests and marches continued basically throughout the entire summer all across Spain, including one in October in solidarity with the Occupy movement here. And this is really interesting to me because actually today, in Spain, they had a general strike. And it was organized by a few of the main labor unions there because there's a bill passed that will overhaul the labor rules to make it much easier to hire and fire workers. So there were 900,000 people marching in Madrid today, 800,000 people in Barcelona, Lots of factories shut down. Factories were shut down, and depending on who you ask, the energy consumption went down between 16% to 25% across the whole country. 150 people were arrested. The police were firing tear gas and rubber bullets. But they are also sort of using this. They're threatening to, or the unions are threatening the government to plan not just a one-day general strike, but a continuous general strike starting May 1st, I believe, if things don't change.